Think about your digital life for a second. It's a massive empire of data, right? Everything from your social media profiles to your bank account. But how do you actually protect all of it? Well, today, we're going to build a digital fortress. We're diving deep into the world of security management.
And this is the question that probably should keep us up at night. Because, let's be honest, with every single click, you're either making your defenses stronger or you're leaving a door wide open for someone to walk right in.
The reality is, our digital world is constantly under siege. It really is. So if we're going to build an effective fortress, we first have to understand the lay of the land. What exactly are we protecting? And who or what are we protecting it from?
And that brings us to information security. At its absolute core, it's all about one thing: control. It's the whole collection of rules and practices designed to guard our data from anyone doing anything with it that they're not supposed to.
Okay, so you can't just start building a fortress without a plan, right? You need a solid blueprint. And in the world of InfoSec, that blueprint is this incredibly powerful concept known as the CIA triad.
Now, here's what's so cool about this concept. It's just elegantly simple. Think about it. It doesn't matter how complex a security system gets, whether we're talking about a huge global bank or just your personal email, its goals almost always boil down to these three things. This is the absolute bedrock of everything we're about to get into.
So, the real trick here is balancing these three goals. You've got to keep information secret, you've got to make sure it's trustworthy, and you have to be able to get to it when you need it. It's a constant juggling act. So let's break each one down.
All right, first up, confidentiality. The easiest way to think about this is just secrecy, plain and simple. If someone peeks over your shoulder and nabs your password while you're logging in, boom, that's a breach of confidentiality. The fortress wall has been scaled, and now they've got the keys to your entire kingdom.
Next, we have integrity. This one is all about trust. Is your data accurate? Is it complete? So, for example, if an employee leaves a company but their account is never deactivated, that data is now wrong. It's incomplete, and that's a huge failure of integrity. It's like leaving a back door open inside the castle walls for an ex-guard to just waltz back in.
And last but not least, availability. This one's pretty straightforward. Your information has to be there when you need it. The fortress gates have to open for you, the good guy, right on cue. A denial of service attack? That's like a giant mob suddenly blocking the main gate. The information is still inside, safe and sound, but you can't get to it. You're locked out of your own fortress.
Okay, so we've got our architectural blueprint, the CIA triad. Awesome. But a blueprint on its own doesn't magically build a fortress, right? We also need the rules of construction, the actual models, frameworks, and even laws that are going to guide how we build our defense.
And here's a really important distinction you gotta know. Let's talk about a model versus a framework. A security model, think of that as the high-level theory. It's the what and the why. It's the part that says, hey, walls should be high to keep people out. But the framework, that's the how-to guide. It's the construction manual that tells you exactly what materials to use and the step-by-step instructions for building that wall.
And speaking of how-to guides, here are some of the heavy hitters in the industry. Now, you don't need to memorize all this, but just look at how they're built for different jobs. NIST, for instance, that's huge in government circles for protecting things like power grids. Then you've got ISO standards, which global companies use to show their partners, hey, you can trust us, we're secure. They're all just different roads that lead to the same destination, a really strong fortress. And of course, these frameworks don't just exist in a vacuum. They have to operate within the laws of the land. To make this super concrete, our source material gives a great example from Cameroon. They've got their own specific cybercrime laws and government agencies that are basically the digital watchdogs. All of that creates a unique legal playing field for any fortress being built there.
All right, so we've got our blueprint, the CIA triad. We've got our rule book, the frameworks and laws, but what good is a fortress with no one to defend it? The actual defense. Well, that comes down to three absolutely essential pillars.
People, process, and technology. This is another one of those concepts you just have to know. Think about it. You can have the most expensive, top-of-the-line firewall. That's the technology part. But it's totally useless if one of your people gets tricked into turning it off. Or if there's no process for what to do when an alarm goes off. If any one of these three pillars crumbles, the whole thing comes crashing down.
Let's start with people. These are your guards, your builders, your first, and honestly, your last line of defense. This is why training is so ridiculously important, because one person making one tiny mistake can bring the whole fortress down.
Then you have process. Think of this as the playbook.
The operational orders. It's the list of emergency plans, the patrol routes for your guards, everything that tells people what to do and when. Without clear processes, your defense is just chaos. It's completely ineffective.
And finally, technology. This is the stuff you can see and touch. Well, digitally anyway. These are your high walls, your strong gates, your CCTV cameras. We're talking about the firewalls, the antivirus software, all the physical and digital barriers that are designed to keep the bad guys out.
So, our defenses are in place. The walls are up, the guards are trained. But the job is far from over. Not even close. Now comes the hard part. Actively standing guard, day in and day out, from the watchtower, always monitoring for threats, always preparing for the worst.
And in the modern digital fortress, that watchtower has a name, the Security Operations Center, or SOC for short. This is the command post. It's where analysts are glued to their screens 24/7, watching the perimeter, looking for any tiny sign of trouble.
But you can't just sit in the watchtower and wait to be attacked. That's a losing strategy. You have to be proactive, constantly checking for weaknesses in your own walls. And that's what a security audit is. It's like a formal inspection of the entire fortress, a step-by-step process to find and patch up any cracks before an enemy finds them first.
Okay, but what if the worst does happen? A wall is breached. It's go time. You absolutely have to have a plan. But here's the thing, there are really two types of plans. You've got contingency planning, that's the big picture stuff. How do we keep the entire kingdom running while we're under attack? Then there's disaster recovery. That's way more specific. That's the IT team's plan for how to rebuild that collapsed wall and get the gates working again ASAP.
Whew, okay. We've covered the blueprint, the rules, the defenders, the watchtower, the whole shebang. And that brings us to what might just be the most important part of this entire equation, you.
Because at the end of the day, security management isn't just about tech and rules. It's about making tough calls under a ton of pressure. It's about looking at a super complex problem, just like the ones you see on this exam paper from our source, and having to answer that one crucial question: what do I do right now? And let me tell you, the world is desperate for people who can answer that question. I mean, just look at this number. Job growth for information security analysts is projected to be 28%. To put that in perspective, that's not just high, it's massively higher than the average for pretty much any other job out there. The demand is absolutely exploding.
So yeah, the demand is crystal clear. And the stakes? Well, they have never been higher. So the final question here, it's not just something you'd find on an exam. It's a real question for all of us. Our digital world needs defenders. The real question is, are you ready to build the fortress,